Power on.
I'm Gary Goddard. I'm the creator and executive producer of Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. I created the concept with the idea of doing a great live-action television show for kids. I grew up myself watching live-action shows, although not so much sci-fi, more like Fury and, a whole host of shows. And I wanted to do another live-action show for kids because at that time there really weren't any. And I had this idea for Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, and I took it to Mattel, and they loved it. And unbeknownst to me, they had an interactive technology that they had wanted to put into a show but had no show for it. My concept going to them was that we would have a live-action show with the first weekly CGI villains. The whole show was created in my mind to use CGI villains, Sorod, Blastar, and I was not coming in there with the idea of an interactive show, to be honest. But then Mattel said, let's make this interactive show, and we have this technology. Can you do it? And I said, well, we'll look at it, and I'll do it if I feel we can make a show that stands on its own and is not dependent upon the interactivity. And we reviewed it, and we thought there was a way to do it. And so we went forward together with Mattel. So the production was quite extensive, quite large. We went to Toronto ultimately, got a huge stage there, and actually an old bus repair facility. But it was giant. It had been made for repairing buses. And we turned it into a major Captain Power studio with sets and with costume facilities, wardrobe, shooting stages, everything. Actually, as I'm watching this scene now, I'm reminded that the first 6 or 8 shows really were light on action. And they'd already been shot when I started to see the shows in rough form. And I thought, oh my God, Mattel is never going to go for this. There's no action. And then we came up with the idea of bookending the show. And so I went in and actually I watched the shows that had been written, and I created and wrote these scenes like the one you're seeing now after the shows had been written and shot and edited. And we added these on afterwards. And what is great and what I really like is in every single show, I don't think you can tell that we came in later and did these. They all have some element that relates to the forward motion of the actual show that had already been written and shot. And so I'm kind of proud of that. The other thing that we devised after we saw a few of these shows was we basically used the kind of James Bond idea of a big action opening that would grab the attention of the audience and would also give us the ability to add some interactivity that Mattel wanted and do it in an unobtrusive way. So this way, every show opened with a very powerful action-oriented, action-centric sequence, and then at the conclusion of whatever that element was, we got into the actual story. But the interesting thing is how these were created after the fact. And I would hope that no one, without knowing that no one would realize that by watching the shows. So here, the action's about ready to cut loose, and you can see how we have now added the interactive signals that are necessary for the kids at home to interact with the show. Now, the other interesting thing was I did not want to do a show where, at the top of every show, a card comes up or a voice says, oh, get your interactive jets. It's time for the Captain Power show. So what I wanted was that if you didn't know there was interactivity and you just happened to tune in this show, you would never know that there was an interactive element. And that's kind of how it turned out. The kids that knew. They had their jets, they had their power jets, and they knew that there was interactive signals, and they would get their jets out and be ready for it. But if you were an adult or even a kid who didn't know about that, you would just watch the show on its own merits. We tried to always place the actual signals for the power jet interactivity in areas that looked like they belonged in the show. The power panels and the chests of the robot, of the Biodread soldiers, or in, power generating plants, or big machinery, or moving weapons, tanks, that kind of thing. That's where we generally put the targets. We're very careful never to put the targets on anything that had a living creature, a human being, because, of course, the whole creed of the show is that you, Captain Power, are fighting to preserve life. And we wanted the kids at home to have that same feeling. So they only got points when they were scoring against, hitting these Biodread sentries. So anyway, this first show, you might have noticed, we've gone past it now, but I added that line, let's make a little history. And I was happy a lot of the critics actually got it, because that was our intention, was to make a little history with this show, being that it was the first of its kind. So when I see the show now, all I remember is the frantic schedule that we had to try and get these things out to the actual stations. This is a pre-digital world when everything we were working on was all tape-based. We actually shot in film, and then we transferred to tape. And then when we were doing the production on these shows, the post-production, we would have to synchronize 10, 12, 15, 20 reel-to-reel tape systems to layer in all of the music and effects and battle sounds, everything else that you see in some of the larger scenes with a lot of sound effects, a lot of music. So we were really almost making a mini feature every week with the amount of matte shots and glass shots and special effects that were going. Every single shot in the show generally involves some kind of effect, lighting effect or smoke effects or shooting plates to use with the CGI. And we had many challenges. One of the funny stories is that when we got our first, we were working with Canadian crews who had never done a show like this before, and we had specified that when they went out to shoot that we would need plates for the CGI firms. And after the first couple of weeks of shooting, we asked for the plates, and we basically got a set of 35 millimeter slides. And we were like, what are these? And they're like, these are the plates. And we're like, no, plates, it's moving footage with the actors in it that we're going to insert the CGI. So that gives you an example of the kind of learning curve we had in Canada with a lot of the teams that were assigned to us. But the main thing was time. When this project started, we really had to get out of the gates fast, build the sets, get the costumes, set everything up, get the CGI company lined up. And before we know it, the first two shows had to hit the air. And the way this worked was we created each show, and we had to send out 2 shows at a time. The first 8 shows, because we were creating these prologues that I was writing with the action sequences, were very complex. Plus, we were having to redo most of the action sequences because the plates, as I described, weren't really plates. We had to go back and restage a lot of the scenes with the same actors, reshoot them, and get everything on film so that we could have Arca, get the animation, the villains in there. So everything here was a long haul. Everything was challenging, and we were having to, in many cases, make it up as we go.
Tina was my father's lab assistant. She was brilliant, beautiful. Every Friday, we'd meet at City Limits bookstore. We'd sit, play chess, talk. I never could beat her at chess.
Just friends?
For a while. Then the war started. We lost track of each other. Later, I heard she joined the resistance.
If Dredd burned out most of the West Coasters, then she's
alive. No one else could have sent that message. It was our private joke. Something only the 2 of us could know.
San Fran.
I can't believe the devastation.
No Biodread readings in the area. Shall we go in with the power suits?
No, let's save our power. Area's clear for now, and we just might need it later. Put it down where you can, pilot.
Right.
So prior to doing the show, we actually shot a trailer, which was pretty well done, I guess, had high production values and kind of established the idea of the show. We even had Stingray in that one, the guy that was going to be in the water that eventually got cut just because for a live-action show like this, with all of the challenge we had, nobody wanted to, have one of the guys in water every week. Because if you know anything about filmmaking, there's a lot of problems that go with that. And again, we were pre-CGI, so effects here were all real. But the trailer itself was a very good trailer, and I think in spirit, the the shows that we did had a lot of the same feeling, but of course, making a real show is very different than a trailer. In the trailer, we wanted to make it look as if the show had already been produced. So we had multiple sets and multiple scenes, and we went from scene to scene as if the show was already in production. In fact, it was done, I think, almost a year before we were actually in production. But back to the show. If you want to ever have a complex show, think about this one. We had everything a normal show has. We had multiple sets. We had lighting. We had the cinematography, costumes, makeup, all the normal things. Then we had heavily made up and costumed sentries. We had stunts. We had pyros. We had pyros that had to be attached to the stuntmen's costumes and sometimes to the Captain Power team when they were taking hits. We had pyrotechnics. We had explosions. We had glass shots, matte shots. We had to shoot the plates for CGI, the first weekly show that ever attempted to put CGI-created characters into a live-action show on a weekly basis. We had the soundtrack and all the usual things you have to do with mixing. And then on top of all that, we had this whole new technology for the interactive element, where we had to have interactive signals. Everything had to happen. Everything had to happen fast. It had to go out to the television stations for broadcast, and the schedule was extremely, extremely aggressive. And we did it. I mean, sometimes you look back and say, how do you do it? But you just do it. You buckle down and do it. I think during the first 3 or 4 months of the production, we had every post house in Toronto on this show. We were using every single post house there was. One was handling dialogue. One was handling music. Another one was for the overall mix. So another house was doing nothing but creating the effects, of which there were, hundreds, if not thousands, for every show. Every laser blast, every door close, every piece of electronic gear, every single thing had to have its own sound effect. So it was pretty incredible. I mean, just in this scene, I'm looking. This is a simple scene, but the sound of the helmet coming off, all of those things are post, because if you're watching this as a professional, those helmets and armor is plastic, and it has to sound metal. So everything here, that falling down, every single thing. So it was definitely a challenge, but we had a great team. I was very fortunate. I had a team of people that worked with me for years as I built Landmark. There was David Thornton and Ted King, Gary Gutman, James Feldon. It was a really solid team of people who knew how we worked and knew the quality bar that we attempted to achieve every time we went on a project, whatever the project was. But I would say that Captain Power was certainly one of the most challenging, in that we were doing multiple shows in very, very constrained schedules. This Lord Dredd, of course, was a cool character, and Lord Dredd, I think, again, if you're a fan of the show, you know that we predated the Borg by over a year. So we did not copy the Borg copied us. And even more than the look of Lord Dredd and the Borg, I think the fact that we were digitizing all of humankind into one great overmind, that entire concept was lifted for the Borg, where, as you know, they were basically assimilated. And so we were we were surprised that our basically whole idea of Dredd and digitation was kind of taken by the Star Trek show, but we soldiered on, and but I think it's good to know that Dredd came first, and so now I'm watching this and I'm remembering that every show required a host of people behind every single element there you see. We didn't just have a wardrobe guy on each person. We had an armor guy. We had a weapons guy, props. There's the pyrotechnics again. The other thing I'm thinking about as I'm watching this was as we were shooting Captain Power, I am probably one of the only directors in history that missed the premiere of his own feature film, because Masters of the Universe was premiering in Hollywood, I believe at the Egyptian Theater. And I had planned to be there, but I was here with Captain Power, and we had just started. I think we were in our I don't know if we were in heavy pre-production or we started the first. Anyway, it became impossible for me to leave because we were in tense schedule. So that would tell you more than anything how intense the schedule was for this, that I could not leave to go to the premiere of the film that I directed. So everyone always says when they see pictures of the premiere, like everyone's up there except me. Well, I was actually in Toronto on our stages for Captain Power when that was going on. And luckily, since Mattel was one of the big actual partners on the Masters movie, they certainly understood why I couldn't be there. But so all of these memories are coming back now as I watch this show. So another interesting thing was the fact that we had, when working in Canada, we had to, it's a point system, so we had to either decide we're going to have a cast of all Americans, or we're going to have American directors but not writers, or whatever. And I felt that the writing talent was the most important. I felt if we got the writing correct, that the rest would follow. So by using American writers, we could not use American directors. And so this left us to use Canadian directors. And it's not that Canadian directors were bad, but none of them had ever done shows like this. The shows that were shooting in Toronto at that time were pretty straight-ahead detective shows and that kind of thing. And in we come with this massive science fiction show. And I think one of the biggest challenges for myself, and I think Larry was up there a couple of times, I think Joe might have been, and the biggest thing was to convey the sense of the science fiction world to the directors and to the other team participants up there who were not necessarily really familiar with this genre. So not only did they not have a technical understanding of how these things get done, but the story material themselves was not exactly always, it did not come easy to them. But the fact they were good stories, that the writers came up with compelling stories, of course, that did help them. So I've always felt that the scripts were pretty strong, and that the direction was not as good as it could have been. And of course, my original hope was that Mattel would have funded a studio right out here in Valencia, and I really, crazy as I was then, I wanted to write, direct, and do all these things. I was just going to do it all. I'm going to do this. We're going to do this all. Landmark, we're going to get a studio. We're just going to make the whole thing happen. As it turns out, Landmark was really critical, my team at Landmark, in getting this thing done and getting it out, and of a quality that we promised. But, we had a lot going against us up there in Toronto for those first few months. By the end, we were getting our rhythm, and I think you'll actually see as some of the shows, we hit our stride around the 8th or 10th, 8, 9, 10, 11 in there, and in the two-parters that we did, we were really hitting our stride, and I think the directors were getting more grounded in the show and understanding how to pace themselves and what was needed, and understanding what a plate shot was, which was very important. The format that we devised in the first 6 or 8 shows that came after the fact became the de facto format for the show, and the writers that were doing the new scripts were told, okay, this is how it's going to happen now. We open with an action sequence, and that leads into the story. So we have a kind of a prologue that precedes everything. Getting these shots with Hawk was a challenge. Obviously, we're using green screen and trying to give a sense of motion with him. And again, today, using digital technology, this stuff would be very easy. But back in these days, every shot was a challenge. And but we're pretty happy with the end result. And getting these 2 first shows out the door was an incredible Herculean challenge for the team. And I will tell you, we made it with hours to spare. I won't say minutes to spare, but hours to spare. And there was really a fear that we might not make the delivery, and that would have meant a bunch of stations that had signed on would not have a Captain Power show at the time they had promised it. But we made it, and it was very nail-biting. There's a whole thing when we got the first interactive toys in. One of the other challenges we had was that as we're doing this incredible schedule, and as we're trying to get the show done, we finally get the first actual, not the prototype. We'd had a prototype jet so that we could actually check our signals, but the first shipment of the actual toys off the Hong Kong or China, wherever it was being made, line came in, Air Express. And we get in front of our shows, and we have our jets, and we put in the batteries, and it doesn't work. And I wake up Joe Morrison. I call him and go, your jets aren't working. It was kind of good news and bad news. Good news is we got the jets. The bad news is it's not working. They work if you put the jets up about 2 inches from the screen. So another mad dash during those final few days before the show had to get out was getting the signals to work. And luckily, between the toy engineers who came up with the interactive and the engineers we had in Canada with my guy David Thornton, they were able to increase the signal on the show and make an adjustment on the toys so that they would work. But one more example of a show problem, a challenge, things you never envision when you start out to create a show like this. Things that come up along the way, and you have to kind of bite the bullet and go, okay, we have to solve this. Let's do it. And you're solving it while 20. It's like whenever you're doing a movie or a TV show like this, especially in the sci-fi world with all of the effects and all of the costumes, all the different things. It's as if you're on a fast-moving train, and while you're on the train, you have to get back to the fourth car and make repairs. You sometimes have to lose one of the cars and attach the other ones. You're in this constant state of changing and redoing and revising and solving problems while you're on this fast-moving train that cannot stop. So, and this was one of our solutions also for the, we wanted to have a certain amount of, or Mattel, I should say, wanted to have a certain number of interactive moments, minutes. And one way I eased the burden of the writers was coming up with this tail sequence, which provided about a minute worth of. I think they wanted 3 minutes in each show, so this killed a minute right here. So it was a minute I could say to the writers, "All right, you only have to worry about 2 minutes." And then I think we killed a minute in the opening action sequences generally, and that left a minute to distribute throughout the show. And I think sometimes we're even a little higher, but anyway, this was a really great idea, if I do say so myself, to try and take the pressure off of the writers having to worry about putting these action sequences in every single episode. So between the prologue and then this end title sequence, that really solved a lot of the interactive issues. So Captain Power was challenging, but ultimately a very worthwhile project, and very glad I created it. I'm glad Mattel got behind it, and I'm glad we were able to do this. And it's been great watching the show again with you.
Hold on. I'm gonna blow this